to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
How's it going out there? All okay? We made it to episode 4 of the Straight to Video podcast, all Star Wars New Hope style. As always, I'm your host, Rob Lane, and I hope everyone is doing good out there, staying busy and healthy, and as always, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to these chats. Today I'm talking to singer-songwriter Rayen Belchere, all the way from South Carolina. This was a real cool chat for numerous reasons. Over the past couple of weeks, I'd seen some press buzz about Rayen and his country rock band Early Ray, who have a new album called Apple Pie. But Rayen and I have been in touch way back in the Trash Pit days, probably over 10 years ago. Some of you may know him as Kid Kid, bassist from the early Wednesday 13 days, and shortly after that, the band Bourbon Crow. I remember getting his solo album, 1,000 Bars, 2 Stars and 1 Guitar, which, when I heard it at the time, was the last thing I expected from a guy who was part of a shock rock band. This album took more of a subtle singer-songwriter approach, so it was a bit of a curveball when I heard it. That was the last time I'd heard from Rayen until recently, when Metal Sludge website began putting word out that his band Early Ray had done their own country music reimagining of the hard rock song Cherry Pie by one of my all-time favourite bands, Warrant. Immediately my interest was piqued and I needed to find out some more. And artists such as Wednesday 13, they've never shied away from their glam rock roots, so it's not the biggest curveball to find out that Rayen himself has his influence etched in this genre, but you can't imagine how deep his story actually goes. There's some wonderful direct connections with Warrant's late great singer Jani Lane, which Rayen reveals, and the whole story, it's so genuine, it really does add so much weight to their reworking of the song, which has now evolved from Cherry Pie to now Apple Pie, and it works perfectly with Early Ray's southern country vibe. The singles video, that also goes above and beyond, with an appearance from former Warrant guitarist Billy Morris, who had a hand in getting the project off the ground, and there's a cameo from the original Cherry Pie girl Bobby Brown. Rayen really was able to go full circle with this song, and it's easy to hear his genuine love and passion for just the entire project. I knew before we dived into the interview it would very quickly become a hair metal nerd chat, so get ready for that one. But I hope it comes across as much fun as it was to do. It's so great to touch base with other fans of that style of music who still have the same love as when they were a teenage kid finding it for the first time. If you're not familiar with bands like Warrant, or if you perhaps wrote them off a long time ago, I hope this chat perhaps casts a new light on it all. Really hope you enjoy it. Be sure to check out the band's new album over at earlyray.com. But for now, here's my straight-to-video chat with Rayen Belchere of Early Ray. I want to talk about early stuff like things that set you on the path to what you're doing today and all that kind of thing, but I'm afraid it might end up to be like a Warrant interview if that's cool with you.
That's fine. Well, you covered me before at Trash Pit, right?
Yeah, I was trying to think where we must have crossed paths, because I interviewed Wednesday a few times. I got your solo album right towards the end of when I was kind of wrapping up the magazine.
Yeah, I still have copies of it.
Yeah?
I trust you. Whatever you want to talk about, just throw it at me. We'll riff on it.
Yeah, so I want to try and get us in a time machine and go back to your very first concert, which I know you've mentioned is seeing Warrant on the Poison Flesh and Blood tour. So would that be 91, back end of 91, or would it be into 92?
I want to say November of 90, I think. It was right before Cherry Pie really kind of just went crazy. I still have the ticket stub somewhere, so I could send you that information. We could plug that in later, but I think it was in November of 90, or either it was, you know what? I take that back. I think it was November 89. I think Cherry Pie had not come out yet. It was on the Dirty Ride. It was right before. I think they had finished and they were working it. So it was right around that time. Technically, Warrant, since they opened the show, were the first band I ever saw in concert. And Joey Allen threw a guitar pick at me, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And Jani Lane made such an impression because he just was like the ultimate dude. At that point, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, but I'd like to sure try someday. And then, Poison comes on, does their thing, and I just leave there. I was such a fan already of both of those bands, but I left there going, I think I know what I want to do.
Yeah?
I think I got it.
Who did you go with?
My big brother, who's 5 years older than me. So he had just gotten his license. I think he was 16 16, 17. He knew I was such a big fan, so he's like, get tickets and we'll go. So I mowed lawns in my neighborhood for like 2 months straight to raise enough money to buy a ticket. I wouldn't take it back. I'd probably go back and mow double the lawns out of everything I got out of that show. Yeah.
Did you have good seats? You say you got Joey Allen threw a guitar pick at you, so was you pretty close to the front?
We were on the floor, but we weren't like crazy close. You know, we weren't like the first 5. I want to say maybe like 12th row back. I was in my seat like going nuts for Warrant, right? Like I was like, this is the best thing I ever saw. And Joey Allen noticed me and pointed at me. And the guy had great aim, right? I guess he had a lot of practice, but he just swung it and it just boom, hit me right in the chest.
So good.
Back then was when everybody wanted guitar picks, and so everybody's like, oh, give me that. And I still have it. Let's see if I can find it. I keep all my little nerd stuff around. Let's see. I actually had this the other day. I'll see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. This is where it all started.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, man. That's how the whole thing started and why we're ended up today.
How old were you at that time?
I had to be 11 or 12. I can't exactly remember. I need to pull the ticket stub out and do the math, but I know I was around 11 or 12 because Cherry Pie came out the next year.
How were the goosebumps when the house lights went down?
Oh, man, I didn't know what was happening. I was like, oh, shoot, man, is somebody fighting? Is something going on? Like, why'd they turn the lights out? I really did. I was just like, I was freaking because I'd never been to a concert. I could still hear it in my head.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to be on the other side of that a few times, but it's really magical as a kid who's never been through it. And then you hear the lights going, and then you hear from Hollywood, California, ladies and gentlemen, Warrant. And it's just like, whoa, like my 11-year-old brain just exploded.
Have you ever seen that footage from Warrant Poison show and Warrant come on and they've removed all the grills from the stage? They've actually took them out so Warrant can't move around as much.
I heard that story. I don't know how true it is, but I never had the nerve to ask those guys when I met them. See, Warrant was one of those bands that could only headline because Jani Lane was such a force. I love Bret Michaels. Love him. He's one of my idols, right? Poison, Look What the Cat's Dragged In was one of the reasons I do what I do. But Jani Lane, just on a frontman level, he comes from Ohio. He's a good old boy. He's like the ultimate college frat party frontman. If he saw somebody in the audience not having fun, he refused to let them sit. You could tell Warrant was on a mission, and it was a hard act to follow. And the next year, they were headliners. I went there to see Poison, but I was like, I love that opening band. They were just different. And I heard those same stories that they were turned the heat up so much that the Poison guys took away some of their area that they got to move in.
I'll send you the YouTube link because I thought it was fake. Then there's an actual YouTube video.
Oh, really?
I'll send it to you after it's spoken. Yeah. It's like a health and safety hazard gone crazy because they'd never be able to do it these days. It's mad.
Please send that. I'd love to see it. I love that stuff. My buddies always send me videos. I got a DVD right here of Warrant and Pantera at some festival I got to watch at some point. My buddy Jason sent it to me. He's a big collector of shows, but I've never seen the one you're talking about.
I didn't get to see him live until last year or 2 years ago when they came to the UK with Robert Mason. So I never got to see him with Jani.
I probably saw him 10 times, and I could tell you they were hands down one of the most underrated live bands from that era. You could tell the bands that come out and just mail it in, and then you could tell the bands that backstage go, we're going to kick everybody's ass, let's take a shot. You could tell that once you've seen those concerts. In the early days, Warrant was on a mission, dude. They were on a mission to crush anything in their way, and they did.
The Warrant Poison tour was always like the tour I wish I'd seen. That along with the Warrant Firehouse and Trickster.
I saw that tour as well. They actually did a pay-per-view at that concert here in America, and I bought that pay-per-view as well, and I used to watch that all the time. I think it's on YouTube as well.
So before that show, what was your exposure to just music in general and hard rock? I know you've mentioned Metal Edge, Headbangers Ball, but was there a person who introduced you to it?
I had to be 6 or 7 because, check this out. In my nerd room, everything's just right here. Kid, here's one of my fan club cards from Motley Crue. Nice. I was 9 years old that year. The year after I got introduced, I think I was 7, and my cousin would listen to rap cassettes. He loved the band Rat. Then he's like, dude, you got to check this band out, Motley Crue. This was before Theater of Pain came out. Right around the same time, maybe. We listened to Shout at the Devil, and I was like, whoa, they worship the devil? He's like, I don't think so, but it's pretty cool. You know, for a kid like me and coming from the South, you know, not being exposed to it, country music was around me. But the thing, as a kid, I wanted to see fireworks and blood and pyro and Kiss and Motley Crue dressed up in makeup and big hair. That was cool to me. And I've been a fan ever since. And then when I started picking up Metal Edge magazines, which was kind of like Circus Magazine, Hit Parader magazine, they were great, but they were pretty straight down the middle fastballs. Metal Edge let you behind the scenes and let you get to know the band a little bit. Even though it was a little cheesy sometimes, like here they are at the wedding.
Yep.
But that was cooler to see pictures of Vince hanging out with whoever at a wedding or backstage at the Roxy, stuff that you never saw in Hit Parader. So you kind of got invested into them as humans.
All the softball games and stuff like that.
Dude, I went to that baseball park just to see where they used to play those TJ Martell Foundation games. Yeah. I went there just to take some photos. But yeah, they let you behind the scenes more. So you got to be more invested into the band as opposed to being, this is just what he thinks about the new record. Or like Hit Parader and Circus. Like I said, love them, but they were just straight down the middle. Whereas Jerry Miller did a really good job of letting you inside. And I argue to people, Stevie's Metal Sludge picked up where Jerry Miller's Metal Edge left off, except it was do you know much about wrestling?
I think SummerSlam 88 was the first thing that I saw, which blew my mind.
You'll get this reference at least.
Okay.
It's like Metal Edge with Jerry Miller took a heel turn and Stevie took it over. Like when Hollywood Hulk Hogan got to be a bad guy. But you still got coverage of the bands and behind the scenes and a little bit. Blood took it to more of a TMZ level.
Yeah.
But yeah, Metal Edge, Decline of Western Civilization, the Metal Years. I used to watch that movie every single day as a kid. I mean, just dreaming of the Sunset Strip, dreaming of being a rock and roll dude. Headbangers Ball, I would tape those. And fortunately, because of the Wednesday band, I got to be on Headbangers Ball. I think they aired us 3 times in America. And then Headbangers Ball, like across the world, played us as well. So yeah, those 3 things. And I got to be in Metal Edge. Stevie actually gave me and Wednesday at the Decline of Western Civilization tour of Hollywood a few years ago. Wednesday and I got in Stevie's SUV and he took us around and showed us everything. So that was kind of a dream come true. I've been pretty fortunate, you know, to be able to just orbit around the moon of my heroes like that.
Were you born and raised in South Carolina?
Yeah. I moved to LA when I was 18.
So was hard rock a big thing in your hometown? Because I recall it was still huge on MTV around 91, maybe even going into 92.
Well, I was like the chubby kid who had the jean jacket with the patches and everything that everybody kind of made fun of for liking the music. That years later, it's ironic, those same people are out trying to find like Motley Crue shirt to look cool. I think it's the same story of every small town, the same story of Wednesday, who grew up right up the road. It's like there were 2 or 3 of us rock kids in each town, and we all were friends, and then maybe 4 or 5 other guys that could play instruments, and we all became buddies. But, you know, I will say this, that era of music played really well in this area. Like when those bands were out their tours, they would always come through here because they'd have a big audience. Mm-hmm. But my specific hometown, it's hard to say because I was still in school. I lived in the era. Like I was wearing my Twisted Sister shirt to school and people were making fun of me. So I felt like I was the only one. I thought I was like, I'm carrying the flag for these bands. Everybody hates them, but I love them. What was special about the Warrant Poison show is I was surrounded by 15,000 like-minded people for the first time. And I was like, whoa, this is the best thing ever. Yeah. Everybody loves the band. This is so cool. Nobody's making fun of me. People are like high-fiving me for my jacket and stuff. You know, I was just like, oh yeah, cool. So yeah, it was a life changer. But going back to your question, that's the things that influenced me the most was Headbangers Ball, Decline of Western Civilization, and Metal Edge magazine.
Sweet. So you mentioned wrestling. So I'm wondering, being where you're from, did things such as hard rock, wrestling, it's all very larger than life. So is that, do you think, what appealed to you more? Because it was totally different to where you were coming from.
I'm not sure if you know much about the era of like Jim Crockett Promotions, Four Horsemen, Ric Flair, that really early stuff. All of that was about 20 miles from where I'm sitting now. Jim Crockett Promotions actually was born out of Charlotte, and all those wrestlers lived here. So we didn't have basketball. We didn't have NFL yet. We had Billy Graham doing gospel speeches and pro wrestling. That was the 2 events. I was just a gigantic fan, but I had no idea I was living in the motherland of that era. You know, it's like the Sunset Sunset Strip of wrestling was here back in the 80s.
Do you still follow wrestling now, or do you just hark back?
No, I can't. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And that's not disrespect to people that are watching it right now, but you got to understand, I grew up in that era, and I was around and totally active for the Attitude Era, the NWO, ECW. I just don't think it's ever getting better than that trifecta of organizations all pushing each other at the same time. In ECW, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but they could not get away today with what they got away with back then.
Oh my God, no.
And then when I watch wrestling today, don't get me wrong, I'll still go see a show and I'll enjoy it for what it is, but I don't follow it. When they took away the ability for wrestlers to create their own personalities and their own promos, you can just feel that it's scripted because they're not actors, they're athletes. So they're up there, they're reading, they're going like, tonight, big man, I'm coming for you, blah, blah. And you can just tell they're reading. I did watch the latest WrestleMania because I was in quarantine, and I thought some of the things they did with The Undertaker in the John Cena Bray Wyatt match, I was pretty cool. And shout out to my friend Kim Dilla, who made Bray Wyatt's costume for that. She's a great rock and roll clothes, wrestling clothes maker. So look her up.
Oh, sweet. How do you know her? From California, or is she more local to you?
She lives in Virginia. You might remember her as Volvatron from Gwar. A few years ago, the girl that was in the blonde with the purple and she would shoot blood out of her boob. Her name was Volvatron. Well, in real life, her name is Kim, and she's a sweetheart. She's absolutely fantastic clothes maker and just designer. And I don't know the right word to say, but she's an all-around badass. But she designed and made those clothes for Bray Wyatt, which is, from that match, which turned into an action figure.
Yeah.
So that's pretty darn cool, awesome. I think. So, yeah, I always try to shout out my friends.
For sure.
Yeah, so I don't follow too much new wrestling. No. I watch old wrestling.
Cool. So when it comes to music, was there anything in particular which made you think, I think I've got a real go at this, which made you do the leap to Hollywood? Obviously, you was confident in your songwriting and your singing, but was there a particular incentive that made you think, look, I'm going to make a jump for this? I mean, it's very brave to do it.
Being young and dumb, I tell people, is really one of the most beautiful times in your life, because you do things that older you would go, no, I'm not doing. That's crazy. Here's the thing. There was no decision. In the movie Decline of Western Civilization, there was one place to be. There was one destination. In Metal Age Magazine, there was one place to go. There's one destination, and that was Hollywood. That was LA. Got it tattooed on my elbow. So I just put everything I could into a backpack and got my guitar and got on a plane and went out there, and had no idea what I was doing. Didn't have any friends out there at the time, but this was before social media, before cell phones were really crazy. So I would just be walking around taking it all in. And my first stint out there didn't last but a year or so, because living in LA, anybody who does know, is really daunting and overwhelming, especially for a kid from small town Carolina. It wasn't a matter that I didn't love it. It just was so expensive.
Right.
And so I came back, regrouped, did some stuff here, took what I learned out there. I've lived off and on in LA since then several times, even as early as a few years ago.
Right.
Yeah, I just kind of go back and forth. I go out there until I'm sick of it, and then I come back home.
How did people in your hometown react to you moving out there? Was it a big deal? Like, holy shit, this guy's like really going for it.
Yeah, my family was really cool and really supportive. But, some of the people on the outside were like almost scared for me, because back then, there really wasn't an awareness. People thought Welcome to the Jungle was real. Like, you get off the bus and you're going to get robbed and, be put into like some gang and everything else. And it really was not like that at all. Some people were scared for me, and some people were like, well, what do you think you're going to do? Go out there and be famous and be a movie star? Like, no, you don't get it. So it was a mixed bag of reactions. There was a little bit of support, a little bit of jealousy, and, but mostly love from my friends and family. Mostly love, yeah. Everybody was really supportive, and everybody digged.
So did you form a band once you were out there?
I didn't form a band, but I sang in one.
Okay. This
was 20-something years ago, and their singer quit, and he needed a guy. So I came in and learned the material, and I played at the Whiskey, which at that time I thought, I was like, that's it. I got to play the Whiskey. Fuck it. I'm going home. I'm going to go get a job and just coast. I lived my dream, and because afterwards, typical rock and roll form, there was a girl in the audience who thought, she wanted to hang out, and, you could put the rest together. So I was on the Sunset Strip. I played the Whiskey and got to hang out with a hot chick. Man, I was check. It's over, It's a magical place.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get it. It's one of those places you either get it or you don't, and a lot of people don't. And just recently, I took my brother out there, and we're walking down Sunset Strip, and as you know from the Nerd Locations page, I'm such a historian nerd for stuff. I'm like, that's where Guns N' Roses lived. That's where Motley Crue lived. That's where their first record was in the store at Aha's. This is where the album like I was just pointing things out. My brother was like, all that happened in these 2 blocks? And I'm like, yeah, all of that happened within those 2 blocks. And and not even getting started on Lemmy at the Rainbow.
I think that's the insane thing when you first go out there, if you have got this knowledge of all these clubs and you do see how close they are, literally just next to each other in these small places. It's unbelievable to think of the history that's just come from, like you say, those few blocks. It's crazy. It really is.
Even if you go back to the time, like, where the Viper Room, right?
Yeah.
It used to be called the Melody Room. And I'm not sure which gangster on it, whether it was like Mickey Cohen or one of those guys, but the downstairs bar used to be their torture room.
Wow.
Yeah, all that's documented. And it's still such crazy history. And Tom Petty was the first person to play the Viper Room. And, everybody from Jimi Hendrix to Jimmy Dean played the Whiskey A Go-Go, and the Roxy has so much history. Rocky Horror Picture Show started at the Roxy. A lot of people don't know that ran at the Roxy for a long time. So much history, and like I said, and that's not even scratching the surface before you get to the Rainbow, which I think is the ultimate place.
That's just the hub of everything.
So yeah, I'm a big nerd for that stuff.
I was wondering, if you don't mind, I've heard you tell it a couple of times, but I wondered if you could share the story of when you first met Jani Lane at NAMM, because when I heard it, I thought that's an amazing story.
Going back to the first show, he just made such an impression on me. And it became, as I got a little older and listened to the records a lot, it became really obvious to me that he was a next level songwriter. Not just glam rock, but just writing songs. Like, he would say stuff in songs, I'm like, that's a lot deeper. Like, I Saw Red, you listen to those lyrics, put that against, and I'm not going to say any names, but put that against most songwriters from that era, and it's like, it's the difference between Pee Wee and NFL, like the major leagues. And so I was at NAMM in '97. I just met Dimebag Darrell. I just went through his line, and I was walking away, which Dimebag was awesome. I'm a gigantic Dimebag Darrell nerd. I got a replica guitar hanging around somewhere. So I'm walking down the aisle, and here comes basically one of my iconic heroes, Jani's just walking by himself. I'm like, holy shit. And then I'm a kid, right? I'm like, I had one of those little wind up cameras, and I'm so nervous. I'm winding it up. I stopped and I was like, Mr. Lane. And he turned around. He was kind of in a bad mood, and I understood that. And I kind of was stuck. I was like, fuck, I just caught him in a bad mood. I was like, can I grab a photo? And he was like, yeah, let's do that. And he was cool about it, but I could tell he was just, something was up. I took the photo, and I don't know whether it was just instinct or if I felt like this is my moment. I just said, as he was kind of rolling off of me to go back about his day, I just mumbled, kind of half said, dude, I think you're a great songwriter. I just think you're such a great songwriter. I said it twice, and he stopped, and he turned around. I thought he was insulted or something. He goes, what'd you say? And I said, I just think you're a great songwriter, dude. Your stuff is so good. I kind of just said, I wasn't trying to interrupt you, dude. My bad. And I think he could tell that I was sincere. He turned around, he came and shook my hand. He goes, dude, I needed to hear that today. I don't know what he was going through. He goes, so thank you for that. He goes, you know what? Fuck that last picture. A girl and a guy was walking, if I remember right beside us. I know it was somebody, and he stopped them with my camera. It said, "Hey, will you take another photo for us, or will you take a photo for us?" It was going to be a better picture, and that's the picture that is. There's a little story underneath the new Early Ray CD, but that's the picture right here.
Just the best
of me and Jani at NAMM. Yeah,
so cool, man.
So.
You got to write with him as well later on. That's another part of your story, which is insane. Did you remind him of that time you met him?
One of the things that I kicked myself back then for was I bought into the whole hype of don't ask for pictures, don't tell them you're a fan, and try to be cool. what I've found the older I get is people really appreciate your honesty when you like their art and their work. And so I kind of walked in. I didn't tell them the NAMM story. We started talking about college football because our teams just played each other, like the teams we pull for. And we kind of just locked into that. He was just like, why do you want to write songs with me? And I just remember telling him, I was like, dude, I think you're the best of the era. And he goes, you have good taste, kid. He goes, we just started writing. He's a great dude, man. And, you know, I don't want to sell it like we were best friends, but we kept in touch.
Yeah.
We texted, you know, I helped promote a couple of his shows this way, hung out when he'd come through. You know, it was kind of one of those, like, it's hard to explain to people who've never really been out in the circuit, but they're musician friends you have that you might see once every 3 years, but you just pick up where you left off. And he was kind of one of those guys. He'd see me at the Rainbow or wherever, and he'd come and like kind of slap me and not on the face, but on the back, like, what's up, dude? And we'd do a drink, we'd have a shot or something. And I kind of kept it a little bit at a distance because I didn't want to get disappointed. Like, I've met a lot of my heroes and I never meet them again because I don't want to have a bad day with them.
Okay.
I'm like, I had a great time, I'm getting out. Jani was a good dude, man. He was kind of like just a country guy from Ohio who, in similar ways, had big dreams of being like, you know, David Lee Roth and that kind of whole thing. And he did it, you know.
It's frustrating that someone like him wasn't able to bridge the gap to like what somebody like Butch Walker went on to do. I don't know whatever transpired, whether it's Jani's demons or people working outside of him, but it's such a shame because his songwriting is next level. It really is.
Butch Walker wrote a book, and there's a chapter in it. He wrote a chapter dedicated to Jani at the very end because Jani had passed away when he was writing it. He was kind of a fan like me. He went to LA and he said that Jani came up to him at a party and was like, dude, I wish I had your life. And Butch was just like, dude, you're better than all of it. Just get back on the road kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, he didn't have a chance to do that. His demons took over, but talent-wise, he could have been Butch Walker easy.
Yeah.
He could have did that. A lot of people don't realize, too, is when I met him, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he ghost wrote a lot of hit songs that people still today don't think some random guy. They just wouldn't let him print his name, but they would pay him.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There's a few bands I could tell you off the record that he wrote their hits, and you'd be like, really? But when you listen to him, you go, I hear it.
Yeah, that's nuts. So you're obviously a big movie fan.
Yeah.
What were your outlets as a kid? Was it video stores? Did you have a cinema you went to regularly or anything like that?
I had a cinema I could walk to, and on Saturdays, the guy was really cool with the neighborhood kids. So if you bought one movie, he'd let you stay for as many as you'd like. So I'd go by myself and pay the $5 and watch like 4 movies. And I had a video store near my house. I would always go rent horror movies.
Yeah.
Because they were 50 cents to rent a movie for a day. But the lady didn't want to rent movies to me because I was a kid. And she was like, I'm sorry, this is rated R. And my dad went in there and was like, I'm his dad, rent anything he wants to rent. And she goes, well, even R-rated stuff? He goes, even X-rated stuff. He can handle it. And I was like, it was cool because I didn't have anything to rebel against. I didn't, you know, ever get into the drug scene that heavy and or the drinking scene overly heavy because I didn't rebel against anything. My dad was like, go be a rock star. Go watch these horror movies. You know, when I was a kid, Ozzy did a show here. You could only get tickets at one place called Repo Records on one day because it only held like 500 people. It was a warm-up show for like the No More Tours tour. I was like so wanting to go, but I had to go to school and I don't have a car. And I get home that day and there were 2 tickets to the Ozzy show. My dad had went up there and got it. Or actually, I'm sorry, 1 ticket. My dad had got it. And I was so knocked out and he took me, waited out in the truck before cell phones, before anything, the whole day, let me see the show and then pick me up after. So yeah, I had a lot of support in that area from my family. They really dug it.
That's the best.
Yeah. And I may have that one too. Hold on. Let's see.
Here we go.
Let's see if I can find this thing. Here it is. Just so people can see what concert tickets used to look like. This one right there.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just a green one-off printed concert ticket for Ozzy Osbourne.
And what was the price on that? $18.50.
Let's see. What was that back then?
I think that's what it was.
$18.50, and you can see December 1991. I was 13. So my dad when I was 13, got this ticket for me and let me go see Ozzy Osbourne, which, if you remember back in those days, there would be all these protesters and picketers and stuff. And, you're going to hell if you go see this show and everything. And it just made it cooler to me. Yeah. I'm like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. Let's do it. So yeah, I uniquely, I grew up in the era. When people revisit an era, like if there's a kid now who's like 14, you could tell they're trying to imitate it. Mm-hmm. Like even if they get the leather and the chains and the hair, they're trying to imitate it. But that era was all, even though a lot of it was about the look, I maintain most of it was about the attitude.
Yeah.
That's what me, Wednesday, and the kids of that era, we may do it differently, but we still try to keep that attitude. If you saw Wednesday with me in it, with Piggy in it, it was a show. It was a fun night. Like we got all those cues from Kiss, Alice Cooper, Motley Crue, all that stuff.
Did I read you on Wednesday met at a Tough show?
Yeah. Well, the very first time we were in the same room together and we spoke, we didn't become best buddies that night, but we traced it back to a Tough show at a place called Rocky's in Charlotte when we were like 15, 16. I had to be 15, I think, because I had my driver's permit. But again, from that night, I got Stevie and George the Saint to sign a CD from me, and he's got 93 on here. Yeah, so
that's a collectible CD anyway.
Dude, I'll produce them. And again, we were fans of Tough, so to come full circle and have, become friends with Stevie. He came out to the Whiskey to see the 90210 lineup, and I was geeking out. We just became buddies, and now we're working together on a project. So it's all kind of surreal.
Very cool, man. So how did the Nerd Locations project come about? Was it just I've suddenly got all these photographs from all these places. I should let everybody else share in it and see who else is out there.
I'll be completely honest with you, and I hope this doesn't sound like a jerk move, but it's just the truth, right? I'm not going to bullshit you. Because when I was a kid, LA from here was like TV land. So the first few times I went to LA, I would see things and I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like the building from Die Hard, or that looks like that. And then I would find out it was. And so I would take pictures at these places. I took pictures at the Pulp Fiction diner before they tore it down in 97. I just had all these photos for 100 years, right? Or literally for about 20 years. And a few years ago, the subculture of people that would kind of go out and recreate photos started to become a thing. And I would post my pictures. And these guys that had kind of just started and had like 20 pictures would start talking shit to me, be like, oh, dude, you should have did this. So I was like, okay, I'll hurt your feelings. And I just uploaded like 500 pictures in a day. And I was like, I'll make my own page. This was for me. I posted it on my page. I didn't ask you to come bother anybody. So if you guys want to talk shit, let me hurt your feelings a little bit. I think right now, if I actually put up everything, I'd be over 1,000. I think the guy behind me is at like 150, 200.
That's insane.
That's not patting myself on the back. It was just a true hobby and a true love.
Yeah.
And people were giving me a hard time, like, who's this guy getting into it? I'm like, dude, I've been into this before you were born. And then I just got to the point to where I drove up to see the Shawshank Redemption prison in Ohio. I was like, you know what? I should just start a page because these people are just giving me a hard time about my photos. Like kind of, I guess they were being competitive, and it was never a competitive thing for me because I love history and I love Hollywood history. I love movie history, music history, and I just would document that stuff for myself. But when people started to try to make it a competition, okay, dude, you want to do that? Let's do it. And I started Nerd Locations, which is on Instagram, and it's just pictures half my face at all these random movie and historical pop culture locations. So, but yeah, it came out of, I had all these photos, but having an organized page came out of frustration of people who thought they knew what the hobby was, which I didn't even know there was a subculture, but they would send me these messages and kind of talk junk to me. I'm like, okay, dude, like if you really want to,
you want to go there?
Yeah, it was like two guys, and I don't want to name them, but after I hurt their feelings, they became my buddies. They're like, oh, we didn't know you were like for real. I'm like, you want me to keep going, or you want me to stop posting? Because I have thousands of pictures, dude.
My picture's so old, I've got to scan them in before I can post them online.
Exactly. And I do have those 100%. You know, it's just something I do. There's no money in it. It's just a love and a passion. And I'll tell you the exclusive on that, because you asked about it. People always wonder why I only put half my face in it. right? Because it's like a half selfie.
Yeah.
In 2005, I had knee surgery. Actually, I went to Calico Cooper, Alice Cooper's daughter's wedding in Hawaii at Shep Gordon's house. And I went on this waterfall hike where they filmed the Lost show, the TV show Lost. There was a waterfall where they bury treasure at the bottom of it or whatever. And so I got to go there and I blew my knee out, right? Completely. It looked like a hockey stick. It was horrible. But I put it back together, got on pain meds. I come back home. I get put on in LA. The doctor put me on all these steroids. So depending on which week it was and how much the infection was, my face was either like this or like this, you know? So I'm like, you know, to avoid that, there's some photos I look like Fat Albert in and some photos I look just normal in. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to avoid this stuff. I'm just going to do this guy right here.
Yeah, just to prove you were there, and that's good enough.
Sometimes I just throw my hand in there and you see my tattoos just to show I'm here, you know.
So what's your holy grail place?
That's a great question.
Because there's a lot of places nearby you on your page, right?
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, it was odd because my whole fascination was everywhere but here. And so when the pandemic hit, I would just get bored and I looked up at Atlanta, which is just a few hours away. So I had no idea how much stuff was filmed there. So it was like kind of a gold mine around here that I didn't even know about. I was going everywhere else to get these photos. I'd say my holy grail picture personally was, to take it back, when Guns N' Roses put out the Paradise City video. The second half of that city, you see their bus go into Castle Donington, right? And they play during the day on the main stage. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to do that. So when I was in the Wednesday band, we got this main stage at the same time slot as Guns N' Roses Paradise City video because I did a lot of work. I'm like, okay. I told our guitar tech, guy named Fitz, who now is Tracy Gunn's guitar tech, I said, I want to recreate this photo. And there's a picture of Axl with the crowd, and you can see the tent to where they would mix you from. Yeah. I'm like, I want that picture. He's like, why? I was like, for me. And he took the photo and it's on the Nerd Locations page. I couldn't recreate that right now if I wanted to. It's not like I could just go there and recreate 50,000 people at Castle Donington, you know. But I got to do it one time. And that's probably my favorite picture. And as far as movie stuff, I was on a mission to recreate everything from Pulp Fiction, which you see these figures up here. I was able to get every existing location of Pulp Fiction. I actually found the Marcellus Wallace's bar, which everybody thought was a set, and ended up being a strip club in Hawthorne. And I was so determined when I lived there, I would go and I was like, this is a real club because there was a ceiling. A lot of people don't know if there's a ceiling, it's a real building. If it's in a studio set, you never see the ceiling. So I'm like, this is a real place and I'm going to find it. So I went into the worst neighborhoods of LA to the most shady strip clubs. And they would look at me like, what are you doing here? And I'd walk in, I'm like, this ain't it. And then one day I drove down to Hawthorne. I went to a place called Stars with the Z, very glam rock of them. And I walked in and it was like, here it is. This is the place. And I kind of put the picture out. And they wouldn't let me take pictures inside because it was a strip club for, you know, I understand. But just to be able to find it and put it back into the world is like, this still does exist, was pretty cool. So that was kind of like my holy grail was putting together Pulp Fiction locations because it always rotates, but Pulp Fiction's always in my top 3. Sometimes it's number 1, sometimes it's 2 or 3, but that movie really shaped a lot of how I feel about how good movies could be.
So your teenage self is sat watching MTV and Cherry Pie comes on for the 500th time. You're still buzzing as much as the first time you see it, and you get a phone call from yourself from 2020, all Bill and Ted style. The guy on the other end of the phone call tells you that one day you'll get to meet Jani Lane and record your own version of this song and even have Bobby Brown in the video. What's your reaction?
Dude, if you gave me the opportunity to do that right now and just handed me a phone and said your 13-year-old self is on the other line, I wouldn't say anything because I wouldn't change anything because I think I would be scared to death if I actually told my 13-year-old self this is everything that's happened. But I did have a moment when even though I had a lot of, got to be a part of a lot of success with the Wednesday band and do some cool things. All these years later, when we were shooting the video at the Rainbow in January, I turned the corner at the Rainbow where the Guns N' Roses November Rain booth is, and I see Bobby Brown there waiting for me to come and deliver that last line. And the guys that had the video cameras, literally, it was like just a quick snap, but a slow second, like my 13-year-old self tapped me on the shoulder and was like, dude, you won. It's over. Flawless victory. Nobody else did this. You did it, and fuck it, you won. And from that moment on, seriously, I didn't care if one person liked it or a million people liked it. Like, a couple of people have been bagging on it on some of the boards and stuff, but I don't care. I did it for me, and it's a tribute to the guy. I think a lot of people think that I'm just some country bumpkin who doesn't know about the era, who doesn't have any history in rock, and who just picked up this Warrant song, and that's completely not the story. It's not a parody. It's a reimagining of it. But for me, if people hate it, right, there's been a couple of people who's like, this sucks, blah, 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 blah. I appreciate that because I know what it's like to stick up for the bands you like. They're trying to stick up for Warrant and Jani in their way, because if they didn't love it, they wouldn't say anything. When's the last time you just were totally didn't care about something, but decided to take the energy to talk about how much you hated it? Right? It doesn't work. You'd be indifferent. If, like, when soccer comes on, no disrespect to soccer, I'm so indifferent. I don't even care or know or nothing. So I'm certainly not going to get on a board and talk about how much it sucks. But, so when people do that, I know what they're doing, and I appreciate it. And just like back in the Warrant days, it was like 80% of the rock fans loved them and 20% hated them. And, I think we're carrying on that tradition because we got quite a few people who like it, and some people just hate it. And it's all good because, like I said, I did it for me. I did it to pay tribute to a guy that meant a lot to me. At the end of the day, I didn't care. And I still don't. I hope it sells 1 million copies, but if it doesn't, it's still a platinum record for me.
Have you had any feedback from the actual Warrant dudes, Eric Turner or anybody like that? Do you know if they've heard it?
I have no idea. Honestly, I'd like to know. I hope they dig it because it's a tribute to them as well. Yeah. It's a tribute to them as well. And, I know stuff like that can be kind of shaky. Billy, the guy who was really great friends with Jani, who was in Warrant in the later years and played in Jani's solo band, actually spearheaded the idea. So, I know there was a lot of internal politics, but dude, I'm just a fan. I just went in with, total love in my heart for what those guys did and just trying to do the best thing I could do with it. And I hope they dig it, but I haven't heard from them, no. So maybe they get it and they're just saying, hey, do your thing, kid. Have fun with it, you know? So, but yeah, nothing but respect for all those guys, Like I said, I still have the guitar pick the dude threw at me when I was, 12 years old, so.
Your new album, was it pretty much finished when you did this track, or has this been part of the whole process? The Apple Pie single, has that been part of the whole process, or was that a later edition? Because I know you wanted to do the song a while ago, but you didn't get the opportunity to do so.
No, that's a great question. Early Ray, we put out singles. I would do a few covers. We put out a couple of EPs. And all that stuff was recorded in LA with a lot of glam rock, heavyweight guys. And because I really wanted to bring that sound. If you listen to a lot of my music, I put a lot of little Easter eggs of 80s quotes in there. When Stevie called me a few years ago and said, hey, Billy's got this idea. They're trying to pitch it to these bigger artists, which I understood. I told Stevie back then, I said, dude, there's literally one guy in modern country music, not a lot, one guy who was literally trained by Jani to write songs, who went to see them when they were in their heyday, who lived it and knows it and can pull it off, and that's me. And Stevie agreed. And I told him, I said, to do this kind of music, you have to have an authenticity to yourself. And if you want to see an example of country people not knowing what they're doing with this music, go listen to the Motley Crue tribute. And you can see what a bunch of people who really don't know this music try to do this music. And you can see it fail horribly. And no disrespect to anybody in that thing. Those guys just have managers who say, hey, you're doing this, go record Home Sweet Home. And all right, cool, we'll do it. But that record was absolutely treacherous because those guys didn't get it. I told Stevie, I said, dude, you could line up everybody involved in that Motley Crue record from A to Z, from the engineers to the guitar players to the singers and everything, and put them on one team and just put me on one team. And let's go do rock and roll 80s trivia. And I'll smoke that whole crew. That's the truth. And, and vice versa. When you see glam guys trying to do country, it kind of falls short because there's no authenticity to it. Like, you can't just decide I'm going to be country. I grew up in the country. Yeah. So did Wednesday. That's why we did Bourbon Crow. But I grew up here, and I also grew up not on the Sunset Strip, but during that heyday. So there's an authenticity to both approaches. That's why people go, well, can a country version of an 80s rock song work? it hasn't really until now, I think, in my opinion, because I think the approach, I went to the studio Jani recorded in at MT Studios. Billy, who was one of his good friends, were involved. Bobby came in to be a part of it. Like, everything just fell in line. The Rainbow let me use the location. Yeah, everything came together for it, and it just fell into place. And I think when people hear it, there's an authenticity to it. Like, when I was recording the vocal, there's an ad lib in the solo that wasn't in there before, that Jani did, where like, I'm a trained professional. And I kind of was goofing during the recording. I didn't think we were going to put that in there. And I did it. And Matt stopped the tape. He goes, you remembered that line, his ad lib. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you sounded a little bit like Jani right there. And I kind of laughed. And I was like, dude, I was just doing an impression. And he goes, let's keep it. I was like, should we? He's like, yeah. I was like, let's keep it. And so it's kind of like a little, the people that go, okay, let's see if this guy really knows this stuff. When you hear that line, I've had a couple people go like, okay, I get it. You really are this guy. Stevie took all the EPs, all the singles we put together, picked his favorites. We remixed, remastered them, and we stuck Apple Pie at the top of it, which is kind of a collection of music through the years of the band. And it all has the same kind of rockin' sound. And that's how the record came about, is just this kind of a hodgepodge of some of our old releases, new releases. And the Apple Pie thing just seemed to be the, proverbial cherry on the top of what we're trying to do.
Because that's why I was asking, you see, because it's almost similar to the original Warrant album. Cherry Pie was the last thing to get added on there. So I just wondered if it was a similar full circle.
You know your stuff, dude. You do know your stuff. That's a true story. Because I think most people just think Cherry Pie is Cherry Pie, but, it was supposed to be Uncle Tom's Cabin. And he wrote the lyrics to Cherry Pie. He told me this himself. We were talking about it. He said he got a phone call from a guy named Donnie Eisner, I think it was the guy's name. And he was at the Rainbow, and the guy was like, I don't hear the hit. We need this kind of song. And he goes, fuck it. And he got a pizza box, and he wrote, swing it to the left, swing it to the right, think about it. And he wrote it out, and he went home and wrote it on acoustic. Next day, played it for Bo Hill, and, the story and the legacy of what it is just took off.
I mean, for me personally, everything about that album is perfect. And I think it stands apart from the genre. Just the whole aesthetic of it, the artwork, the look, the black, the white, the red, everything is just bang on.
It's one of those records that I think gets overlooked, and it's a flawless record. Everything from, God, there's just so much good stuff on that record. Blind Faith, I think, gets ignored all the time. I Saw Red, even their cover, I don't know if it was the import thing, but their cover of Train was on there. Song and Dance Man, Love in Stereo, all that stuff is just hit after hit after hit. In my opinion, in the glam rock era, that's a flawless record, and I could probably say that about maybe 5 records in that era. Where I'm like, I like half of it, or I like this much of it. But that was one of those records it still today holds up. And the reason I can say that, and I factually say that, is those guys are still touring on the record 30 years later. And let's be honest, they're touring on those first 2 records. That's what they're doing. That's just the truth. Look at their set list, So that's how strong that record was. 30 years later, people still want to hear those guys play that music.
Well, I'll wrap it up. If there's anything else you want to add, I've really appreciated you being honest with all the hard rock stuff.
I'm just geeked out that you asked me to be on. I appreciate it. Like I said, we have a little bit of history going back to the Wednesday days, so it's nice to reconnect with you. And I appreciate you letting me be on your show. And if anybody's watching, get the new CD, Early Ray Apple Pie. Just go to earlyray.com and order you a copy. And again, support the stuff you like. I tell people that all the time. It's like, when you buy a record from me or Wednesday or any of the guys that are kind of like still kind of grinding it out, it does matter. So yeah, if you dig it, if you dig that era and you just want to support the idea, go buy a CD or check out the video. The video, just look it up, Early Ray Apple Pie. We got Bobby Brown to come back. Billy Morris is in it. And again, if anybody's watching and digs that era, I think you'll dig it. And if you don't, I still appreciate you checking it out.
Sweet, man. That's awesome.
It's been really cool to connect with you again, bro. And if you ever want to have me back on, just look me up and all that kind of good stuff. And if you ever over this way and you want to nerd out on some locations, we'll link up. I'll show you around.
Nice one, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to do it.
Cheers to you, and cheers to Warrant, and cheers to Jani Lane. All right, brother. Thanks, man.
How was that? Hope you had as much fun listening to that as I did speaking to Rayen. I really appreciate him sharing his stories. And that Jani Lane story for me is one of the coolest things I've heard in some time. So I'm really glad you guys got to hear it. You can pick up the new Early Ray album now from earlyray.com, and it's streaming through Spotify if you want to get a feel of it. I'm going to say if you like stuff like Matchbox 20 or Brad Paisley with a real rock edge, then you'll definitely dig this stuff. Also check out the Nerd Locations Instagram page, which he touched on during the chat. You'll be able to see the Donington GNR photo, and there's hundreds of other great movie location shots. Just head on over to Instagram and search Nerd Locations. It's a really fun page. While you're here, please continue to show the awesome support you've shown for the Straight to Video podcast. Your comments have been so awesome, and it's really put a fire under me to keep throwing these out. And I'm trying to make them as great sounding as I can, so I hope it does sound okay. Drop us a like, follow, or share, and the comments on the Apple Podcast page, they're massively appreciated. So that brings episode 4 to an end. I'll have more for you real soon, but in the meantime, please take care and look after yourselves, and we'll speak real soon. See ya!